Welcome to Red's Barbershop, the place to hang out and talk about hoops. This episode of Red's Barbershop is brought to you by our sponsors, Third Eye Consulting and Coastal Plains Insurance of the Lowcountry. Now, hop in the chair because here are your hosts, Justin Jarrett and Tony Red Bruin. Hey, welcome back to the Barbershop, everybody. Justin Jarrett and Tony Red Bruin. The open light is on, and this is a place to talk hoops. But tonight we're talking hoops with Hoops, the man known only as Hoops, our mutual friend Hoops, Curry Kirkpatrick. He said nobody even knows your first name. It's just Hoops. He told me about a time that a couple years ago you guys were down in the Bahamas, and Dan Hurley came out and said, Leslie Visser, Curry Kirkpatrick, Hoops. Wow, this is big time. So you need no introduction to basketball.
That's before he collected those 2 championship trophies.
That's
now
right.
We're saying, wow, Danny Hurley.
Yeah, no kidding. But that certainly flattered Curry, and I'm sure he said you wouldn't have been as flattered by it as he was, because it's just a regular Tuesday for you. But you guys were before we got going here, you guys were already starting to catch up and answer my first question, which is, to what do we owe the occasion that Dick Weiss is sitting here on Red's Barbershop tonight? Because it's usually something to do with how Tony Bruin caught your eye and captured your imagination at some point.
What? All he had to do was ask. I wasn't going to say no. He was a great player. It's funny. I was just doing some research with Jim Boeheim. He did a piece called "How to Put Together the Perfect Syracuse Basketball Player," and he had a bunch of categories. And Red may have even heard this. One of the categories was athletic wonder. And Red was his guy. I mean, we're talking about Coleman, we're talking about Earl Washington, but when he talked about guys who just did things that people hadn't seen before, there was a little bit of David Thompson in you when you were growing up.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I was kind of surprised because Coach has been there probably longer than any coach in the current times. At least 40 years. I was just talking with a friend of mine, Dan Dunn. He used to play center at Seton Hall, and he was saying that Red, you might not notice, but there's a lot of players and schools and teams in the Big East, guys that he's come across that we all have our little sayings and things that we talk about the other schools. But the one thing that he said that he heard in common is that a lot of guys wish that they had the camaraderie that we have, that when we all get together and talk about coach, we all talk about the same coach. You go to a lot of schools and the time frame, the guys might have had 3 or 4 different coaches in the time span, but like our reunions, you got to go 40 years back, and guys are still telling stories, the funniest stories about what the coach did, but it's the same coach, Jim Boeheim, And,
I love the fact that they were able to be so successful recruiting New York City.
Yeah,
that gave Syracuse a deal. It's almost like Syracuse was the 5th borough.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of alums that live in the New York market are pretty incredible. I'm one of those people that will always think that you guys should have stayed in the Big East.
Yeah.
I think that Syracuse was a big part of the Big East. Listen, I used to go to the Georgetown Syracuse games, and they used to call them the social event of the winter when they're playing the Carrier Dome. I was there one Sunday. It was minus 18 degrees, and Patrick Ewing was there, and Syracuse won the game. And I'll tell you what, it got loud there when you get 35,000 people. You guys wanted You guys wanted Manly, where it was almost impossible to win.
I got that. Well, that started the rivalry. I think we had like I was a freshman there, so I wasn't really part of all the wins that they got there at Manly. But of course, everywhere I went and everything and all I talked about on the news was the winning streak that they had. I believe it was like 55 straight games or something. And everybody was all excited that this was going to be our last year playing at Manly, because the next year we were going to be opening up the Carrier Dome, 30,000 seats. And we just wanted to get out of Manly without being the team that got the loss. And sure enough, Georgetown came in there and gave us that loss. And I forget, John Thompson said some smart thing like that the streak is now done or that ghost is now buried.
I remember that. I remember that.
They've been our mortal, and they were Syracuse's mortal enemies.
That was the best. The games at the Garden in the Big East tournament were probably as good as you were going to see in the early Big East.
Yeah.
The rivalry was so intense.
Yeah.
I mean, God forbid if Patrick Ewing had ever connected in that punch with Pearl Washington.
Oh God, yeah. That was a haymaker, wasn't it?
Would have put Rudy Tomjanovich to.
It must have just meant for him not to hit him because Pearl wasn't the fastest guy either. Somehow he dodged.
Pearl was clever.
Yeah, he was.
He was also smart enough to stay out of the way.
Yeah. But I guess as long as Patrick is, though, it's not hard to see his wind up then coming, huh?
No, that was unbelievable.
Had a long swing. No, you're kind of lamenting the fall of the Big East, but it kind of feels like the New York City basketball scene has kind of gone with it in a way. Like I
worry about that because you used to have coaches who coached for 25, 30 years at the same school, and you used to have kids who came up through the CYO program in their district, and they would all play at the same school. And if you won their big, there was a camaraderie that was built because winning a city championship with kids who all come from the local CYO, that was a big deal.
Yeah. So it's a whole different thing now.
Well, there's so much travel teams, so much recruiting. The teams that dominated play back when you were there kind of almost been brushed aside. I mean, the best team in New York right now, the Catholic League, is probably Archbishop Stefanik. They were never even a factor when you were growing up.
Really.
Now you're finding guys like Boogie Flan who are McDonald's All-Americans.
Yeah,
they have a history of producing a lot of ACC level talent on a regular basis. But I mean, I liked it better when New York had one division. It wasn't A or B. Everybody played in one division. I mean, Power Memorial was still alive. Rice was still around.
Yeah,
now all those
Bishop Lachlan, you had Malloy, Christ the King,
Well, you played for a pretty good team.
Yeah, we did. We got back to back, so I was happy with that.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
I remember the Flemings played for your school. Right?
Yeah, Vern, the one that went to Georgia. Actually, he played in the Olympics under Bobby Knight too, and then I think he was with Indiana for like 9-10 years. So Vern turned it in Monte Cristi into a great career, man.
He really did. I mean, you look at schools like Malloy and the amount of players who went from there down to South Carolina to play for Coach McGuire. I mean, there were. I mean, if you were succeeded in your Catholic League, you could play anywhere in the country, and you would be recruited by everyone in the country.
Yeah.
I mean, I still remember going up at 5-star. They were all Catholic League kids.
Yeah. Well,
and there were really only a couple travel teams back then.
And it's amazing that you say that, because when I look back and I think of growing up and my college experience in terms of being in high school and watching it on TV, I used to watch the ACC. The Big East wasn't even really formed then.
I know.
And so I would always get into the rivalry of the big North Carolina Duke. And of course, everybody used to try to compare me to David Thompson. So I was always a big fan of NC State when they had little Monty Tao and big Tom Neville and Monty. The ACC I grew up with, even though, coming from New York City, all the Southern schools and stuff, and Tinkerbell and all of those guys at Duke. But when the Big East came along, it was like a dream come true. It was like the perfect storm because.
And you didn't have to go in order to.
Exactly.
And everybody could see you play.
Everybody could see you play.
ESPN jumped right on the bandwagon.
Exactly.
And they were doing all your games. And so Syracuse was able to recruit nationally with guys like Stevie Thomas.
And they were smart. They did it strategically. They had St. John's So you had the New York media, and then we had Villanova. So you had the Philly media, you know, and then we had Georgetown and Washington. So you had
DC,
the DMV, you know, media. I mean, it was just Boston College. So you had and then you had Seton Hall for the Jersey. I mean, it was just a perfect storm.
Oh no! Listen, I mean, Connecticut was playing in the league the first time around. They used to travel with 18 writers.
Wow!
They This is unbelievable, Justin. Connecticut played in Maui one year. 18 writers traveled with them to Maui.
Wow.
Holy cow!
I mean, that's unbelievable. And the New York papers. I mean, when I got to New York, we were still doing almost 1 million at the Daily News.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big deal. And I mean, a lot of people read your copy. It was, I mean, I worked in Philly for a fairly long time, but when I had a chance to go to Daily News in New York, I couldn't say no, because I realized what you can do with that type of forum. And Justin, I'm sure you're aware of this, but Tony he may have been, at the time when he was being recruited, may have been the highest level recruit they had ever gotten involved with. I mean, I know they signed.
Well, he was the first McDonald's All-American recruited to Syracuse.
I mean, look, Dave Bing was in another world.
Right.
From DC, but
one of our first guests, by the way.
We had Dave.
I love that.
He was our first guest, right? Yeah,
he was our third.
No, you guys must have flat if you're recruiting the mayor.
He was number 3. We started with Seth Greenberg, and then we had Ernie DiGregorio, rather, and then we had Dave Bing, and then we had Jim Boeheim.
Coach Boeheim.
So we came out swinging.
Wow.
Yeah. We've had.
No, you guys have done well with this podcast. It's great.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that it's keeping the memories of the league involved, because I worry that we're losing a lot of institutional memory as guys like Howard Garfinkel and Tom Kinchowski.
Oh yeah, Golf was my
Larry
guy.
the Scout pass away. There aren't the same level of people around. I love the fact that I just was at a party in the last couple months. Guy had a 70th birthday party, and Lou showed up. 99.
Wow.
And he was still, I mean, he's a little frail, but he was still as sharp as ever. And he was still late for the party. I mean, he's not that far away from reaching triple digits. I think it's great because he's a big part of New York.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, you've been Curry has a lot of kind words to say about you, by the way. Curry,
the same way. He was so far ahead of his time in terms of being a writer. He wrote stuff for Sports Illustrated back in the early 70s that was so far ahead of him. And he was a Carolina guy. So,
through and through.
There was a lot of heavy Carolina influence when he was doing. But boy, he's the one guy that had access to the UCLA team during the Wooden era, and John would let him play.
Mostly through Walton.
He loved Walton because that was his guy.
Well, they were both a little crazy, so they probably
for sure.
And Curry had such a great sense of humor. He was able to kind of get everybody on his page.
He is still so sharp and so funny.
Unbelievable. I love seeing him.
I've been blessed to be able to bring him out of mothballs a little bit and give him his own podcast along with a couple of buddies here on Hilton Head, and it's called Under the Bus, and they throw a lot of people under the bus every week. So we'll have to get you looped in with that because it's pretty great. It's vintage Curry. He's in top form. He shares some great stories, including about you from time to time. But he really is in awe.
Crazy.
He's in awe of your work ethic and just he says you've probably written more words and sentences about the game than the next 2 writers combined, and he's just amazed at how hard you work and how many people know you when you're out working. But he did want me to ask you about a strange Boston guy, he said, named Happy Fine.
That's strange, but Happy
a hanger-on of yours.
Happy was always around. he was very close friends with Bob Ryan.
Yeah.
Because they both went to BC together. And Happy would just get in the car. If there was a big game, he'd be at it. He loved baseball. He loved college basketball. And he would and you'd run into him in the most unsuspecting places. He loved it, and he had an opinion on everything, by the way.
One Christmas vacation, Curry was home asleep at 2 a.m. and the phone rang, and he reached over and picked it up. And Happy was on the other end yelling, "Virginia just lost to Chaminade." He was on site in Hawaii.
But you know what? I'm glad he was. I'm glad he was there for the occasion.
and Curry said no media figure was on this. Nobody was there except I'm pretty sure Hoops was. And if Happy hadn't called me to tell me, Hoops would.
I was actually there the next year because Ralph was still in school and they played there the next year, but they didn't play Chaminade, and so it wasn't really the same. But Chaminade was in this 14 tournament that was right around Christmas. I was there because Penn State actually played in the Hawaii Bowl. So I was in Honolulu for the occasion. When I found out there was a doubleheader, I just felt, I need to be there for this. So I've done some crazy things. I once flew in a private plane. UCLA is playing Notre Dame. UCLA has won 88 straight games.
Yeah,
it's the game that they lost.
Curry wasn't at that one. He was in North Carolina.
Well, you know what? Since it was snowing in South Bend when we arrived, he probably made a good decision. So I got on a plane. And I went with a guy named Bob Levy, of the CBS Levy's, who was a huge. He was business partners with Ara Parsegian, and he was very close to all the people in Notre Dame. He took him. So five of us got in a private plane that he just happened to rent. And we flew to South Bend and got there. And I still remember watching the game. And Digger had spent the entire week prepping for this. He had his players practice cutting down the nets in the days before the game, so they'd be prepared after they won the game. And they had a pretty good team. They had Dantley and they had Shoemate, they had Gary Brokaw and Dwight Clay. I mean, it was a really good team. And but UCLA had Walton, and Walton wasn't completely healthy when I came, as I remember. But I still remember sitting there. Two things happened. 3.5 minutes left, and Notre Dame had put on a run. John Wooden didn't believe in calling timeouts, and Walton is begging him to call a timeout just to slow things down. He just wouldn't do it, and it caught up to him, and he got beat. I also remember one thing, and it's something I never forgot. Always get out of press row at the end of a big game because you get a lot of people who decide to storm the court. I had people flying over the press table to get the court. And I'll tell you what, I learned my lesson because when Pearl played for Syracuse, they had a game against BC. It was a Monday night.
Oh, we hit the shot at half court.
Yeah, and he not only hit the shot, as soon as he put it up, he ran to the locker room.
Yeah, he knew it was coming.
Like he called a shot.
Yeah, he knew it.
Unbelievable. And guess what? There was another court string, but this time I was smart. I moved down to the end on the last possession. When that ball went in, it was insanity. And that's typical of the way the games went back then.
Yeah.
I mean, in 85, you literally had 5 or 6 teams that could have made a run to the Final Four. Now, 3 of them got there, but, and the one team that you didn't think would win, Villanova played the perfect game and beat Georgetown.
Yeah.
Because Villanova could not beat St. John's that year. They could have played 50 times. Chris Mullin and Bill Wellington would have had them for lunch.
Yeah.
But they could play against Georgetown. They had played them twice during the regular season. One was actually an overtime game. And they got in this game and they played a perfect game. They shot 90% in the second half. Didn't turn the ball over against the press, which everybody did back then because most teams only had one ball handler.
Yeah.
And I still remember the end of that game. Eddie Pinkney and Dwayne McClain run over to Breslow. They jump on top of the Breslow. The game was played in April 1st, and they start screaming, "April Fools! April Fools!" And it was because no one could believe the way the game ended.
Yeah.
I mean, you kept expecting the thing to implode, and it never did.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was typical of the Big East back then. Every game.
Plus, I think a lot of people underestimated Big Ed Pinkney. You know, he didn't really have no fear like some of the other players. Big men.
They all played against each other up at 5-star that year.
Yeah.
He and Dwayne McClain and Gary that's how they got together. And they all started going over together. But Patrick was at the camp, and I still remember Patrick putting the extra time in Station 13 when he was up there. But I mean, they were one of the few teams that wasn't intimidated by
Georgetown.
I mean, because Georgetown intimidated a lot of people. The people in the league, they learned how to play with them, and they didn't. And nobody was that afraid of them.
Yeah. That the mystique in the Big East wasn't like it was because we played them. Everybody played each other twice. Like it might have been out of the league, you know, especially like big coach John Thompson wouldn't let them play to anybody. He wouldn't let them talk to the media. It was like us against the world, you know.
Well, they used to stay like 50 miles away from the game.
Yeah. But I mean, I will say, and I hate to say it because, you know, obviously I bleed orange, but some of the stuff that they would yell at Patrick was
really out of control.
You know, I wouldn't wish that on nobody, man.
It was really bad.
Yeah.
It wasn't right.
Yeah, it wasn't.
The amazing guys that I remember about your teams, you won a Big East championship at Syracuse against Villanova, and you couldn't get in the tournament.
Right.
The Big East at the time did not have
automatic
bid.
They
did not have an automatic bid.
Yeah,
I mean, it was one of the best leagues in America, and and the only teams that were getting in were teams that were getting in a large bid.
Yeah, and we had gelled at just the right time. We finally had put it all
really
together.
good. I was at the Sixers game Friday night, got in the car with a friend of mine, and we drove to Syracuse to see the game in the afternoon. It was great.
I think we had to get to that. We beat St. John's, then Georgetown, or Georgetown, then St. John, and then knocked off Villanova, and I think like double overtime or something like that.
No, you guys were really, really good.
It was crazy, and we just knew we was going to get it. But at that time, the NIT had a lot more clout than it does now, so we ended up accepting the NIT bid and ran the table all the way to the championship game, and then we ran into Nolan Richardson's Tulsa team.
I mean,
Paul Presley and those guys.
It's so funny because after he wanted Tulsa, that was the springboard for me to get the Arkansas job.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, exactly. And then they went on to win a national championship.
Yeah, he had brought all of his guys from. He had just won the junior college championship.
Yeah,
and he brought all of those guys. Also, he brought all those guys.
Paul Presley was on that. Was on that.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive. Paul Presley.
Yeah. That's what
he
made
the original. The original
40 minutes of hell
forward.
defense. They pressed the whole game.
They did. That was his whole deal. 40 minutes of hell. Well, let me ask you this question: what do you guys think of where Syracuse is headed now with Adrian?
I think Red is good for them because he's a modern coach. You know, he knows all of the NIL stuff. He knows how to recruit. He's been on that AAU circuit, so he knows the players, and he's seen enough of the transition to the ACC to know what type of players we're going to need to be competitive now. You know, you need a higher level. He understands the transfer portal pretty good. We've been either involved or come away with a good share of the top players so far. So it all looks good and sounds good on paper now. So I guess this year right here will tell it's going to be mostly his players. And he's got off the transfer portal.
I was kind of surprised that Copeland and Brown left. I thought that they might want to stick around only because I think this program is heading in the right direction. He signed two good players last year. He signed Freeman and Moore, who I think
Yeah.
will both start for him. He's starting to get pretty good players. He's already signed a five-star forward from Carolina for next year. The kid White. I mean, he was very good.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, and they're involved. And look, I think Melo's kid is really, really good.
Yeah.
I'm hoping he goes there.
Yeah. It'll be tough on him, but I think he'll be able to handle it. You know, I think he's
I mean, he's that good. I mean, Lehigh is now producing as many high-level Division Ones as anybody in the New York market.
Yeah.
They have 3 or 4 right now that can play at a high level.
Yeah.
The big kids already signed at Florida State.
Yeah.
I mean,
So if you've got some charismatic coaches that can make some good relationships with the kids, and I'm sure Syracuse, I can tell you, Syracuse got enough heavy hitters with the money to make the NIL work, and then especially if the university gets involved, and want to be financially competitive now. That's it's a different world like that. I think we'll be okay.
Well, I like the fact I think he wants to play man to man and wants to play up tempo.
Yeah.
Which I think. Look, it was time.
Yeah. That was one of the things
Jimmy
coaches started using against coach. You don't want to go to Syracuse. You're gonna play zone. The pro scouts won't know. If you can play man, and they kind of started using it against us. It was definitely time.
Really interesting.
Yeah, you're right. But moving up along a little ahead, what do you think? What do you? I'm like astounded by some of these moves that the Knicks are making. I mean, I'm no GM. I mean, I did stay at a Holiday Inn, but I swear it seems like they're making all the right moves.
Well, I'll tell you what. Leon Rose and Wes Wesley grew up in South Jersey, and it's not coincidental that they got a feel for Jalen Brunson. His dad was down there when he was going over, and Coach Cannon for a couple of years before he went up as an assistant with the Knicks. And that was a really good going-over team. Although I have to tell you, I had no idea they were that good.
Yeah.
And the Knicks have money.
Yeah.
And they're paying Brunson $100. Bridges is a $90 million guy.
Yeah.
Even Senator's a $50 million guy. Hart's
I mean, but with the new TV contracts, they're paying money, but they're not overpaying though. If you look at
no, I think that they made some really good decisions. They're going to be able to sign OJ. I don't think they have. I don't think they have enough money to get Hardenstein.
Yes, that's the next
one. I mean, but we'll see how it works. I mean, I like the Bridges. I think will be a very good player for them. I thought he was really good when he played for the U.S. last summer in the World Championships in the Philippines. I thought he was one of the 3 best players.
Yeah.
And I think he has a chance to be an immediate contributor. I mean, they're close.
Yeah. Well, the most valuable thing about him is you can count on him to be there. I mean, he hasn't missed a game yet.
How about that?
He's get all excited when the playoffs coming, then somebody gets hurt all the time,
Well, yeah, I mean, they were down to like 6 or 7 man rotation.
This guy, and Redmond's a really good point. This guy has played 474 straight games.
Yep.
Wow.
He has never missed a game.
Valuable.
In the age of load management, nonetheless.
Yeah, well, it's almost like Lou Gehrig.
Yeah.
That's
unreal in this day and age when you take one off every 4.
And I'm glad because look, if they're paying you $70-80 million, you tell them. I mean, Barkley's right. You tell them you can't play 2 or 3 times a week. Fred, you probably played 20 times a week when you were playing on the playgrounds.
Yeah, for free.
Yeah, for free.
Dad needs to prove it too.
And the thing is, you never wanted to lose in the playground.
Yeah.
You knew you might never get back in.
Exactly.
So
you have to wait 4 or 5 games to get in. Yeah.
I totally agree. Especially when you're playing at a high level like you.
Yeah. But it just feels good after all of the years of having to endure the Nick jokes and all of this to see them just making the right moves. I mean, these guys are young that they're getting. They're getting them for like 3 years, so they'll have some time to build together and gel together. It's just nice to see. And I'm definitely glad that we got you on tonight because the 2 places that you're known, with your great newspaper articles and stuff was New York and Philly, and it seems like I'm not trying to get up a little bit then bash another place, but it seems like as good as New York is doing with the right moves, nobody can figure out what the hell Philadelphia is doing. What are they doing?
After another.
Oh,
They originally drafted Bridges. And for 10 minutes, they moved them to Phoenix in a combination deal, and the guy they got in return wasn't playing in the league in 3 years. I mean, it was crazy. They took a kid from they took a kid from Texas Tech who couldn't play at that level, and I think it really started going downhill when they got into the entire process where they were trading away players for first-round picks, and then throwing up the picks.
Because they could have had Tatum, right? They could have had
Tatum. They could have had Brown.
Wow.
I mean, they took Simmons and they took Mark Fultz, and they could have had Tatum and Brown, who both went third in the draft. But that's typical of the way they think. Hey, Brunson was available. He didn't go till 31. I mean, he's turned into a spectacular talent for them. I mean,
the guys who claim to be the smartest guys in the room rarely are.
Because they live. First of all, they live on analytics. I still believe this. I still think if you see enough basketball and you watch a player, you can tell whether he can play or not. I mean, you played against these guys. As soon as you took the floor, you had to know whether they were good enough or not.
Oh yeah, definitely. You know. I mean, you can tell. I mean, it's funny when you see everybody run to pick up their man, and then all of a sudden you look and nobody's guarding somebody. You know, that's the guy that nobody wants to guard.
You're absolutely right.
They don't run to you to guard you. You know, okay, you must be doing something right, or nobody wants that guy can play. You know. So.
Well, Dick, you have such a encyclopedic and categorical knowledge of basketball and coaches and players, and you've displayed it a little bit tonight just with the way you casually talk about all these subjects in depth. But what about this NBA draft? As a kind of casual basketball fan, I don't know who half of these guys are. Are you up on that?
I think we're discovering now basketball is a global game.
Absolutely.
And secondly, we're discovering that scouts now are starting to lean toward players who learn fundamentals in the gym as opposed to guys who just play games without any consequence. If you're playing 10 games a week and it doesn't really matter whether you win or lose, because you're either playing at 5 or you're playing at 7 if you win or lose. You're still playing.
Right.
I mean, it takes away a little bit of the competitive edge, and I don't know that travel teams right now have learned how to play with each other because it's become a talent collection. Ironically, I mean, when Riverside was around, the Gauchos were really good back in the late 70s and early 80s. Those teams really knew how to play together. Yeah. You literally had the best of the best playing on 2 teams.
Yeah, I won my first AAU championship with the Riverside.
You won,
and with Matt Doherty down in Florida. Yeah,
you were the MVP.
Yeah, that was.
See that?
Great tournament.
I've done my homework.
Okay.
Yeah, you remember it all. I think what adds,
wow.
I think what adds to that too is, in this age, if you're trying to get recruited, it's all about social media impressions, right? And good fundamental basketball doesn't play that well on video.
I worry about social media and 18 and 19-year-old kids because they read
I do too.
And not all of it's positive. And I don't want people to get depressed. I mean, one bad game, the news cycle is so quick right now. One bad game and you can't play a lick. One good game, you're a one and done going to the league.
Yeah.
I mean, it can change. Perceptions change overnight.
The recency bias has run amok, to say the least.
You know what? When he said that, you just take, for example, the playoffs with Dallas and Boston. That when Luka and Kyrie, in the first series, they were talking about the greatest backcourt ever they might be, you know, and then the next series they play against Boston, and like all of a sudden, well, Kyrie might not be where we thought he was, and
they're washed.
He's got to get in shape, and the whole dynamics changed. The whole.
Oh, I agree. Well, I guess Kyrie learned a lesson. Probably don't stomp on the Celtics logo if you're mad when you're walking out the door.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah, that was. I think I bet he wish he had a do-over on that move, huh? He has never played good at Boston.
I think he does too, because his games in the at TD Garden were not great.
No, they were not.
I mean, he's and they were playing at a very high level going into that series. But the Celtics probably have the best defensive backcourt in the league. If you look, I mean, Derek White to me has been a revelation. I knew Drew Holiday could guard on the ball against anybody. And it's funny, you know, the one team I'm sure that the Bucks did not want him to go to was the one team he wound up going to.
Yeah.
And he was a major player. I mean, you could have had 3 or 4 guys on that Celtics team that have been the most valuable player in that series.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and Tatum didn't have a great series relative to what he has been, but like Brown and Drew Holiday and Derek White they were really fantastic. And I thought when they needed Tatum to do it, he got it done for them. They were really hard to guard, and they were hard to score against, which made it harder.
Yeah, it's a really well constructed roster. Like,
I think that Brad Stevens did a really good job with the trades.
Yeah,
and, you know, I mean, look, he had to get rid of Marcus Smart, who we absolutely love, but sometimes you have to make that decision.
Tough decision.
I mean, their first 7 in the rotation were all pretty good. I mean, and Peyton Pritchard comes out and makes a 50-footer at the buzzer at halftime in that last game. You figure, God, everybody in the team can shoot the ball.
Yeah. How much are you still out reporting? Because Curry tells me that back in the day he'd pitch some weird story for SI in some far-flung place like Idaho.
You know, we
he'd show up and you'd be there.
I used to see him all the time.
He said you were a stalker.
I could say the same thing about him, pal. LA. I love going to LA to see UCLA because when I worked in New York, we covered basketball. We covered it through the Big East, every team. We covered Carolina, Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, UCLA. That's or the team that was number 1. Those were the games. If they had a big game, I was usually there. And I'll tell you what, the paper very rarely said no. And I was more than happy to spend their money, guys.
Those were the days, man. I came into the newspaper business late.
I think that the golden era for newspapers was like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and a little bit of the first decade of 2000. When it went downhill badly. And when I left the Daily News, just my last year was like 2015. When I left the Daily News, they stopped covering college sports.
Yeah,
I knew it was bad because the year after I left, Syracuse played St. John's at the Garden. I mean, and it was AP. Sunday afternoon, and the Daily News didn't staff it.
AP byline.
Wow.
Yeah, I can lament that. I was the sports editor for my last year.
Was upsetting to me.
Well, my business came into fruition because I was the sports editor at the Island Packet here in Hilton Head.
That's great.
And my last year there, and then I left, and 6 years later they laid off the last sports staffer at the paper. So Lowco Sports was born, and we're still trying to build this thing up and make it go so we can still have some community sports coverage here in the Bluffton area.
It's a great thing that you do, Just, because I feel that a lot of our high school players and stuff like that, they wouldn't get the recognition that they deserve if you didn't pick up the mantle once they did.
I totally agree, and it's so sad whenever I see an older guy pass away, like this week, Butch McAdams from D.C. passed away, and he was the voice of. He was an encyclopedic grassroots voice down there for high school football and high school basketball, and he had his own radio show every Sunday, and it was great because you always felt like it was living history. When things like that start to change, people lose a lot of what they used to have, and people just don't hear about it. In Philly now, I mean, I have difficulty getting any information on the high schools or the colleges.
Yeah.
They every week, the last week and this week, the high schools have a lot of showcases, and there are a lot of showcases up in Philadelphia at Thomas Jefferson University, which used to be textile, and that's where you find out a lot of things going on, because all the Catholic League teams in Philadelphia and some of the better public and suburban teams are all there. And that's where you learn what's going on, especially with the younger players, because I think it's getting harder and harder. I mean, the days of camp sadly are over, and I don't travel. I used to be in Vegas every summer for Sonny Vaccaro's tournament, 300 travel teams.
Yeah, that was with Adidas, right? That was at Adidas.
That was with Adidas, and it was a great tournament.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Guy,
And Sonny used to run it, and it was fabulous. I loved it. And Sonny would do ABC up at Farley Dickinson, and then he'd go out to Vegas and run that tournament. I used to go every year. I once spent a year, and I got lucky. The Long Island Panthers had a pretty good team. They had a couple guys who wound up being McDonald's All-American. Charlie Villanueva, who played at UConn, Jason Frazier, and who played at Villanova, Curtis Sumter, who played at Villanova, and a couple other guys who played for Louisville and St. John's, and they wound up winning the entire tournament. So it turned out to be a great story to write. I was doing a long story about the whole idea of what it's like for these kids to go and play at the national level, and man, winning the whole thing.
I saw a big documentary. I think it was with LeBron James, and then what's the other guy that was ranked ahead of LeBron James, but then didn't make
when
it.
Was that?
No, there was an actual.
It's been a while.
Well, I know it was Lenny Cook.
Lenny Cook, there you go. Lenny Cook.
And they
ranked ahead of
I was at the big showdown game.
Yeah, they had the big
showdown at ABCD.
Exactly.
The day that Lenny, it probably ruined Lenny's career.
Changed his whole life.
He was at LaSalle. He was the big name in New York, and LeBron just tore him up.
Then he hit the shot at the buzzer on him or something like that, right?
Yep. I mean, it was the ultimate dagger to the heart. And I don't think he ever recovered.
He never.
Nice guy, but he kind of just he started drifting from school to school, then dropped out because he was going to enter the league as right out of high school, and he got hurt before they had the before they had that NBA combine. So they invited him, but he really didn't play. Was never drafted. And kind of drifted. Never really made the league.
It was a great documentary. They talked about the whole Adidas camp.
Absolutely true.
It was great. It was great.
No, I mean the thing about LeBron that I love, when he got there, he was actually just as good a football player.
Yeah.
I mean, he was an all-state tight end. Can you imagine him as a tight end in the NFL?
Oh, he could have been a Hall of Fame tight end without.
I have no
doubt.
Yeah, that guy runs like a powerful deer.
Well, I mean,
he's one guy you want to get out of the way if he.
Yeah. I mean, look at Antonio Gates and Tony Gonzalez and what they did transitioning from basketball, and then think about what LeBron could have done. I mean, he could have been an animal.
I know. I mean, he was.
But he made the right decision.
Well, yeah.
No CTE in the NBA.
I would say the fact that he's a billionaire now would indicate he did make the right.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no CTE in the NBA usually.
Yeah. Wow.
Well,
I feel bad because I begged you to see. I said that we'd only ask you for 30 minutes, and I see we're going. We're a lot past that. I only got like one more thing I wanted to run by you, just get your thoughts on the WNBA and with Caitlin and Angel.
I would say this. I think the thing that she's done better than anyone else, she's built the fan base up to a point where if she plays, there's a good chance road games will be sold out. Every road game that she played at Iowa this year was sold out. The Big Ten tournament was sold out. Every game she played in the NCAA tournament was sold out. And just recently they played the Atlanta Dream down there. They had 17,000.
Wow.
So she is capable of that type of talent. Now, is she ready to be as dominant as Asia Wilson or Breanna Stewart? No.
Do you think they should have put her on the Olympic team?
You know what? I'm not a big marketing guy. I'm not sure that this should be a popularity contest. She's going to be on the team in LA.
Yeah.
I think she never played senior international basketball. She never really practiced with a team. This is a pretty close-knit team. They dominated the World Championships in Australia a couple of years, and they're probably going to win all their games by 20 now.
Right.
I'm sure NBC would like nothing better than to have her in the Olympics because suddenly they could talk about her the entire time. And to her credit, the last couple of games she's played at a very high level. I mean,
the thing I love about her is she always says the right thing after the game when they all try to.
She obviously has been well prepped.
Yeah, she
and you have to admit that's impressive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean it's gotten my attention. I mean, she got me to watch more women's basketball.
That's great.
And then I was impressed with what I saw. I mean, we're in South Carolina too. So
listen. I mean,
Dawn Staley has definitely inspired
for her
me.
game.
Definitely.
Have been. I mean,
that's our NBA team.
The last game against the Sky on Sunday did.
Yeah.
I think 2.23.
Well, that rivalry, she and Angel Reese, they need to just keep.
And I didn't know that would be a rivalry or not because Angel's not a great shooter, but she's an energy player.
Yeah,
she's a great talker.
And she had a huge breakout game on Sunday.
Yeah,
25, which is pretty impressive.
That should be great for her confidence going from here forward too.
Yeah, I'm happy for the fact that you have. Look, it's not magic for her yet because neither of these teams go to the playoffs. But you have two players that people want to see play. Right. And I think that's great for the sport.
Right. And I think the Bird comparison is especially apt to Clark. I mean, I think there's a lot of parallels.
The whole Midwest. But
cult following.
She does have a cult following, by the way.
Yeah. And she went right to the perfect team.
God forbid anybody says anything negative about her in Indianapolis or Iowa.
Oh boy,
they're not ready for that part.
Yeah, this has been great.
Well, but I felt bad because, as good as she is, I'm a huge Dawn Staley person, and I've known Dawn. She was in the high school in Philadelphia, and I love her.
Yeah,
We've been friends for a long time. I was so happy that she got a chance to coach the Olympic team. And right now, in my mind, she's the face of women's college basketball.
I agree.
And she does a great job with her kids.
She is so classy, man.
I love her.
She is the anti-Kim Mulkey. Can we say that?
I'm not. Yeah, I don't think Kim and I are gonna have dinner. I think you make a choice.
Is it an Albert's?
I love Dawn.
Amen. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's as good a place as any to leave it. But Hoops Weiss, we're definitely going to have you on again to tap into
man, this
your
was
wealth of
great.
knowledge about the game, and I'm sure you have many more great stories that you could tell us.
Oh no, it's so nice to talk to you guys.
Oh man, I
Yeah, it
enjoyed
was
this
awesome.
so much.
Absolute pleasure. We've had some legendary basketball
You
journalists
have.
on.
Well, I love the fact
we
you
had
got all these guys
Billis.
on.
We had Billis. We had
Chris Broussard,
Greenberg, of course. We had
Pretty good.
Broussard.
Yeah,
We had Peter Vesey. We had the
Yeah,
Viper.
Pete, my man
Peter
Pete came on
Vesey.
for me.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. We've
well, you know,
it's been a real pleasure
He
for
has
me. I mean,
no-
a lot of.
Peter's very smart and he has no filter.
Oh, I know.
Never
He was
did.
wonderful.
That's what I love
We
about
also
him.
had Charlie Rosen, who is, you want to talk about a character.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about a guy who knows basketball at all levels, including the Eastern League. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
We've
He's written
had
a
some
bunch
good
of
ones,
books.
but
He's written a bunch of books too, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
sent me a couple too, autographed them and everything.
That's
very
nice.
good.
Yeah, that's.
But
my
you're
man.
right up there at the top of the list, Hoops Weiss. It was an
Yeah,
absolute
thank you so
pleasure.
much.
We appreciate you, and we appreciate our sponsors, Third Eye Consulting and Coastal Plains Insurance of the Low Country, as well as everybody who showed up to listen or watch tonight. Hoops, hang out for a minute after the outro, and we'll talk a little bit more. But for the rest of you, we'll see you the next time we're here in Red's Barbershop. Thanks a lot for coming along.
Whoop, whoop, dog.